Are you ready for this?
I've been born ready for this.
Welcome to another episode of Techsplanation. You're watching the airplane mode, so if you're driving, put your phone down, but get your caffeine ready because this episode's going to come hot and fast as we talk with Jeremy Morris from Vizrt. Jeremy, welcome back. Hey, you got 2 episodes in a month, man.
You're I know. I had to maintain continuity, by keeping the same shirt on each time. So I'm just going to have it hanging back there every time you call me. So that way.
Well, that's probably the best way to do it. Yeah.
That way it always looks the same. It looks like we did this, all in one day. It'd be great.
Or just pull a Steve Jobs and only have one outfit,
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Hey, listen, I want to talk, last time we were talking about APIs and kind of the different ways you can connect to a TriCaster. And in that conversation, you mentioned a couple of things like Flex Panel and some of these add-on modules. I want to talk about the things that people forget. Right? You're putting together a system. Everybody sort of thinks of, I got my TriCaster, I'm good. But they don't think about maybe some of the add-ons or are just afraid to talk to their customer about, hey, if you add this, device over here, like an NRS, here's the value of that, right? So let's kind of dive in and talk about the things that people forget. But before we do, let's recap. So for the audience at home who maybe isn't quite sure what TriCaster they should have or doesn't quite know what a TriCaster is, let's walk through the platform again. So from the top on down, we've got the minis, minus the 410 at the bottom. So all the minis are self-enclosed, 4 input to start, can be upgraded, but they vary from the top with the SDI to down to the HDMI to the NDI only. And of course, the new Go version, which is USB to start. Right.
USB with NDI. So yeah.
USB with NDI.
Right. So all of them have NDI capability. Yeah, it's a different form and flavors depending on what you currently have. The Mini X is very popular because it has the 4 onboard HDMI ports. The Mini 4K has been around for a while as the all NDI solution. And then, the new Mini Go, the first Viz branded TriCaster with the onboard USB and then also NDI. So that's also beneficial at a lower price point for those podcasters, corporate, house of worship that only have a couple cameras. They're just starting out. So the Mini Go is a great entry level box.
And then, of course, we move into the rack mount version. Those are all desktops. The rack mount, it starts us with the 410, which is an SDI 1080, SDI in, SDI out, and NDI, of course. And then as we move into the big ones, the TC1, the TC1 Pro, and of course, the TC2 Elite. Now, the latter two, I think, are really important because those are the ones that have Live Call Connect. Not only do they have the most inputs, but they have a version of Live Call Connect, either, 3 and 9? In terms of remote calling?
TC1 Pro, you can do 4. The TriCaster 2 Elite can do 9.
Yeah. So lots of flexibility there. So today's question of the day, is the TriCaster still an all-in-one solution?
Yes. As the history of the company has grown, we are still, the video production studio in a box. The idea is one-man band operation, but now we have the capability of farming out different jobs to different individuals as we grow. We kind of talked about that the last time I was here with the API and some of the third-party control capabilities. But yeah, it's still designed as an all-in-one encompassing video production solution, a purpose-built appliance, if you will.
Most certainly. Now, though it's self-contained, this is the one thing that, and this is kind of where you and I got on this conversation, is people sometimes forget the things they can add onto it. And financially for the dealer, it's a good deal to, get your customer everything they need right out of the gate. But oftentimes you got to ask some questions about how you operate, what type of production you want to do to understand maybe what types of things you should be adding on. So as you and I were talking through this, we decided to put together a couple slides on the most commonly missed products that they probably should be thinking about for customers. All right, so let's jump into a couple of reasons why somebody should be adding some of this to their TriCaster. So contributing to a unified workflow, which all production elements work in an integrated fashion. So, and effectively getting more of the products from Viz that work with their TriCaster or designed to work with their TriCaster, right? And just building a more integrated, tight solution with the control surfaces and the other pieces. Expansions made by Vizrt can utilize functionality specific to the family of products. There are features in Flex Panel, in FlowX, all these things that again are designed to work with the TriCaster to enable more functionality and better ease of use.
Right. It simplifies the ecosystem and the workflow. Yeah.
Completely. And since the TC line is made with these expansions in mind, utilizing Vizrt's expansion is much more simple and convenient than going outside. So basically trying to use third-party applications to control. Now, we did talk about third-party control last time, but we're talking more about like third-party hardware, right? MIDI controllers and things that, would be much easier to use if you're using Vizrt branded products that, again, were designed to work with the TriCaster. Or designed to work for the TriCaster. So let's hit the first one out of the gate, which is the Flex Panel. Why should somebody add Flex Panel? Why do they miss Flex Panel?
I have one sitting right here in front of me, and I go everywhere with it. It's a fantastic product to be added to any of our TriCaster lineup because, again, it's part of the name. In that Flex is I can talk to any of our TriCasters from one panel. And the other cool thing, if I have multiple TriCasters in an ecosystem, I can control them from one Flex panel. So I can bounce back and forth between different TriCasters. I can talk to my Mini 4K. I can talk to my TC1 Pro. I can talk to my TriCaster 2 Elite and have that functionality directly in front of me. So the Flex is a fantastic part to any ecosystem. And then we also have added the PTZ control as well as advanced audio functionality. So I have expansion TRS connectors on the back of the panel itself. So in a full-on remote environment, I have localized audio from an input and from an output perspective. So the Flex, I can go on for 4 hours talking about it.
Well, and the most important part, we say the word flex, and you just gave a bunch of reasons of why it's flexible. But the number one reason, it's a fully IP panel, meaning it really just needs an Ethernet port to connect to the NDI network infrastructure, and then you're controlling those TriCasters. You're pulling and pushing audio. It's all right there.
Well, that's a very important distinction because we've had our 2-stripe and our 4-stripe panels for a while now that are Ethernet based. But it's a direct serial connection between the panel and the TriCaster, where the Flex is talking on an NDI layer. So now that leverages that remote capability where our previous panels didn't have that capability because they were localized. Yeah. Where I'm on an NDI network, now I can use NDI Bridge. I can control a TriCaster from my house. In fact, I do that when I take the show on the road. I leave all my TriCasters here at home, and I just take the Flex panel out to a trade show and just use NDI Bridge to go back to control my systems. So there's a lot of cool stuff we can do based on that NDI control layer.
Yeah, all things that aren't possible with the other panels. Now, as you mentioned, there's audio expansion on that one specifically, which brings me to I/O expansion, right? So when we talked about some of the different TriCasters and the fact that they have a limited number of maybe SDI inputs, you're ready to add more. I see a lot of people adding Sparks to add an extra input here, an extra input there. But a lot of times we see that all their gear is in one central location and they need to connect it maybe to a big router or a big video hub with a lot of SDI inputs. So the NC2 Studio I/O, I think, is a really important box to think about because it gives you the power of a whole bunch of Sparks under one interface, right? Lots of I/O capabilities. Each input is convertible to be either input or output. And so it just gives you a lot more flexibility to have it all right there and add. And, and if you think about stacking multiple units, you can really grow your NDI infrastructure very quickly with these.
Yeah, it's our rack-mounted Swiss Army knife with the capabilities, inputs and outs, and it's software controllable. So if you've got all the SDI lines off the NC2 going to a patch or going to a router, well, today it's an input, tomorrow it's an output because I'm doing that inside the software of the system. So I'm not locking out features or forcing you into one type of workflow. That's been the beauty about our stuff for the longest time. Not only do we play well with others, but we don't force you into one type of workflow. We allow you to expand and convert when necessary.
And correct me if I'm wrong, this is the only version this is the version that has 12G SDI in it, right? So
yeah, we do have a 12G Spark
Ultra HD.
That's available, but again, that's an encoder or decoder in one box. The NC2 does have two 12G connections, so I can take a 12G in or a 12G out and can do that conversion into the NDI ecosystem. Because again, NDI is frame rate resolution agnostic. It doesn't care on the NDI side, so you can mix and match whatever you want to.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. So another box that I think often gets overlooked, but it's especially if your customer is saying like they're at a point where maybe they're at 2 or 3 or 4 Sparks, Yeah, I mean, the conversation really should be, hey, are all the sparks going to be spread out,
Mm-hmm.
or are they all going to be in a single rack? And if you're at that point, you might as well upgrade to the NC2 so you get more I/O, you get more capability, and fewer power supplies.
Yeah.
That's important, right? All right, let's talk about the NRS, because I think this is one that maybe some customers don't understand or don't see. And I think it's a good piece to have here. What is the NRS? What does it do? Why should somebody get one?
So the NRS is our network remote storage appliance. So this allows us to have a centralized device for recording, archiving, playback, editing. That is the gateway back to our editors, our social media accounts, the graphic designers, or whoever. So this is a centralized repository of all of that content. So the drives in a TriCaster could fill up pretty quick. Or if you're in an expanded environment where I've got multiple TriCasters, I want to have a centralized storage for all of my content that I have access to. So the NRS, we have 3 different flavors of that. The desktop unit, which I actually have one sitting down there. So it's not desktop, it's desk bottom because it's underneath. But 10 gig, 1 gig connectivity, depending on your workflow, we have the connections for that. It's also nice because it takes advantage of a lot of the SNS Evo tool sets, the share browser, the slingshot, all those feature sets. We just have our NDI toolkit under the hood on that. So it does allow for a lot of NDI in and out. Crash recording, I can do a straight ingest independent of the TriCaster, but then still move those files back and forth when necessary. We support the growing file size. So if I'm doing an online nearline edit, say in Premiere Pro or something like that, I can see what's going on in that timeline as the production's going live. So having the NRS there, or even to be the gateway between an existing large, SAN or NAS that's already there on site, this could be the go-between to get all your existing stuff back into the new workflow with the TriCaster.
Yeah, and one thing I want to bring up on this one, I think it's really important, is a lot of times I see, somebody who's like, they only see it as a place to record or pull files from, but the NRS is designed to be fast enough to also be your editorial platform.
Yes.
So you don't need to have multi-tiers of storage. You've got one tier that's the files come in from the TriCaster, the files get played to the TriCaster, but or pushed out to TriCaster, but your editors are grabbing those files and never having to move them. They're not having to move them to local hard drives to edit them. They edit them right there on the platform. And so it really cleans up an environment without having to have a bunch of drives everywhere, media files. Where did I put that asset? Right? It doesn't matter. It's right there. It's still on the NRS.
Yeah. So we have the MAM capabilities as well on that side as well. On the traditional Orange platform, there's a MAM asset management system on there, but with utilizing this platform, not just from an editing perspective, because it does sit on the network as network attached storage. Now I can set up permissions to interns to play and edit. I can send stuff off to the social media team or even the graphic content creators that can then output content to that I can pull into the TriCaster. So it's not just traditional video production use, but also other use cases can take advantage of that system for content sharing.
And talking to some of the devs on this, there's some great features like transcoding and tagging and all kinds of, really, really powerful tools built into this box just to make it more and more valuable. So definitely something everybody should have at least 2. Now let's jump into something a little different here. So this is something a little newer. I mean, it's been out a while, but I think it's sort of one of the sleeper hits that nobody really knows about. And that is Flowix. I mean, Flowix, you and I have talked about it on some other episodes before. I still think it's one of the pieces that people are having a hard time wrapping their heads around because it's not traditional graphics. I mean, yes, when they're on screen, they're traditional, but how you utilize, implement, and touch the system is not. Walk us through it, Jeremy.
Right. So this is a completely web-based graphic platform. There's no software to load. There's no client seats that you have to install anything on. It's all HTML5 based. So I'm in a browser. I'm in the cloud, if you will, which means I can have graphic operators anywhere in the world. I just pull out that URL and that loads into my DSK. So now whatever's being pushed from anywhere on the planet, that's my graphic output that's feeding the screen. And also with our data connection points, that's also something that is talked about a little bit, but not fully exposed to everybody to understand. When I talk about data integration and where are those fields being populated from? Is it coming from a scoreboard? Is it coming from telemetry off of a race car? If this is a horse race track, if this is a voting machine in a council setting, or even in federal government type information, stock market transaction and trading and all the ticker information, that content is coming from somewhere. How do I translate that to make it look good as a graphic on air? Well, our graphic plugins, our data connection points allow for that to happen. So wherever that data information is coming from, high school baseball stats, whatever, that is just straight data management. That now I can populate that into a good looking graphic on air and a high quality as well. So that's also a big benefit of going to the Flowix platform. Now, yes, it's subscription based, so it's also a different animal from a pricing perspective. But the fact that every TriCaster, brand new, comes with a free 90-day license to play around with that's something that should be talked about up front. So even if you have an existing workflow that's already established, they may be using our live graphic plugin already with the Adobe Creative Cloud. That's fine. We can stick with that, but here's how you migrate up into the Flowix world, and here's the benefit of what you do with that. The two-screen experience capability, the local QR code capability where I have QR code on screen that I scan with my phone at home, and now I can have a true fan interaction or live voting for something on air on kind of like that American Idol type feel. We can do a lot of that cool stuff inside that Flowix platform, so it can augment an existing graphics system that I can take advantage of all the cool features that we have the capability of inside that, or just move them over to the new system straight up. So there's a lot of cool ways we can deal with Flowix and a lot of applications that even traditional graphic systems haven't really had a good handle on in the past. Social media integration, those capabilities can all be tied back into it as well.
Well, and one really important one to me, and this kind of goes back to Flex and many of these tools, a lot of the newer tools within NewTek or Vizrt within the TriCaster ecosystem are designed to allow for more remote capability, right? As you talked about earlier, your TriCaster stays behind, but your Flex panel goes with you. When we think about some of the bigger infrastructure, when graphics come to play, traditionally that's done from a CPU on premise. It's usually a device in the rack that's driving the graphics into the TriCaster. And in Flowix's case, that's not, right? Because it's in the cloud, because it's remote, your graphics can go everywhere with you. Your graphics operator can stay home and deliver graphics. Your graphics operator can be in Poughkeepsie and deliver graphics, right? And be operating the system. So it really allows for a more, remote location type of feel or remote production type of feel, because you're not tied into having to be right next to the system anymore to create and drive graphics into the TriCaster.
Well, and also going back to that interoperability, you mentioned that earlier. I think we talked about this in the previous episode, the control layer. I can trigger API commands, TriCaster going back to Flowix and Flowix going back to TriCaster. So I can affect how those graphics operate on screen. So that's also a very cool way to have the integration, because I don't have to have an operator. Okay, play the next one, play the next one. It's like, no, I can trigger different effects coming from the TriCaster, send that back to the Flowix account to then make sure those graphics are where they need to be. The score bug pops up at the right time. I run that replay and everything kind of shifts on screen. I can handle that, go in that direction. Or yes, I can have manual control from inside.
Yeah,
but also the layering
because
too.
because it's headless, because there's no box on prem, running that thing in sort of API mode like that means you're right. You don't have to have an operator, nor do you have to have any hardware. You're just calling graphics out of the cloud system.
Yeah, the content's already been created. It's just, how do I affect it on air? What does that look like? I can affect that.
When do I take it on? When do I take it off?
I can automate that.
Amazing. Okay, so there are a couple other things, and producer Jordan actually pulled up a really nice list of what we're calling other expansions, and these are hardware and software applications from Viz, and as you guys kind of call it, from Orange, the Orange side of the business. So there's some interesting products here, and some of them are, like Vector Plus is really the granddaddy of all the TriCasters that exist, the 44 input one. So it's a little bit different, but Viz Engine, Viz Now, Viz Connect, XR Set Plus, all these are other tools from the Vizrt toolbox effectively. How would somebody go about even thinking about these and wondering where to implement this?
So yeah, a lot of this comes up in questions now because we've expanded the company, if you will, to be under one portfolio. So a lot of different tool sets and different products can now be utilized from a wide variety of clients and end users now that really didn't have access before, because it was traditional as a direct kind of business market. But now we've opened this up to a lot of players to have access, and Libro is on there as well with the sports analysis thing. We've got some cool stuff coming when it comes to Libro. But Vector being the first cloud production TriCaster system, TriCaster Now will be the simplified version of that, where you're running an AWS, a TriCaster headless in the cloud from anywhere in the world, utilizing NDI Bridge to get content up and down. So there's a lot of stuff that we have access to that we didn't in the past. So that was kind of part of the overall combining the companies under one portfolio, was to allow for that. So when you've got situations or things might come up, it's like, hey, how can I do this? By no means, reach out. We'll have the conversation with our pre-sales department or the folks with JB&A to go through to see what makes the best fit. Or if this is a year one, year two kind of conversation where here's where I start, here's where I add on, that allows us, again, going back to the flex we talked about from the panel, but also the nature of the company. We're flexible in that workflow where you can grow without having to scrap everything and start over each time you want to change something. It's like, no, we allow everything to kind of grow with you and how you want to do it. We adapt to the environment more than you have to adapt to the technology. So that allows us to be in a lot of different markets and a lot of cool scenarios, and even budgetary friendly environments that really no one's really played in before.
Yeah, and it answers one of the questions that I've been begging for a very long time, which is Unreal Engine support and getting, it sort of baked into the overall ecosystem. And of course, with XR Set solution, that answers that one because it gives us access to a very nice interface to sit over Unreal and perform some XR capabilities.
Yeah, Vizrt Engine can do that as well with a lot of cool stuff that they're doing on that side of the world. In that product, because Engine, it's a good name for that box. It's incredibly powerful on what you want to do from a graphic perspective, in and out of that Unreal environment. I can bring in content and go back out with it, and then bring that back into the broadcast world. So I'm not having to stay in one world. I can move pretty seamlessly between those.
Awesome. All right. Well, listen, if you've got questions on which things you should be adding to your TriCaster, reach out to Jeremy Morris at Vizrt. Find out what tools are missing from your next TriCaster project that you're working on. And of course, you can also talk about APIs and the things that we covered in the last episode. If you've got any other questions, you can always reach out to your JB&A sales team, or you can buzz us here at Techsplanation. We're happy to answer your questions. Until next time, Jeremy, thank you for being here on the show, and we'll catch you all on the next episode of Techsplanation 2.0. Maybe it won't be the airplane mode. Maybe it will be. Just wait and see. Bye-bye.